So it's been a while since I made a humble update video, and that's just because I feel like there hasn't really been anything noteworthy to speak of until now. In this video, I'm going to go over Humble's most recent investor call, which took place on June 30th, in which the CEO Brian Foote spoke for about an hour to go over the roadmap for Humble. And this is definitely a video you'll want to watch because there's some really important and key pieces of information that I want you guys to take away from this, especially for Humble investors. So first off, at the beginning of the interview, Brian leveled with everyone to let them know he is also a huge shareholder in the company. So driving real value for Humble is not only in the sake of others, but for Brian and everyone over at Humble's self-interest as well. He then touched on how this was a pretty big quarter for Humble. He went on to explain how they've boosted their global media presence by going on Fox Business, Bloomberg, Forbes, and CNBC. Brian basically admitted that he's still getting used to being in the spotlight and needs to work on his delivery and how he presents information. But to be honest, guys, just from the investor presentation alone, it definitely seems like he's getting much better at public speaking. And not only that, but Brian also acknowledged some of his previous interview mistakes, which I can't stress enough how important of a trait that is in a CEO. Overall, Brian came off as very humble, pun intended. He doesn't come off as a know-it-all, but rather very self-aware and forward-thinking. Another topic that Brian also brought up was building the world's best data room, which is basically the area of the website for investors to go and see the roadmap, where the company is headed, what they've accomplished, etc. Which is great because any public company that is looking to build investor relations and achieve a higher stock price needs to be as transparent as possible with their investors. So having a place where all that information can be stored and accessed easily wouldn't be anything short of a treasure trove. Yeah, that's right, a treasure trove. Keep in mind though, that while this video presentation was solid, there definitely do seem to be a few bumps in the road for Humble. And this is something that I think investors and future investors as well need to understand. So one of these was, Humble Pay, which involves peer-to-peer transactions on the blockchain. Long story short, if the technology isn't implemented correctly on Humble's platform, they could be looking at a ton of fines. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of compliances that the company has to meet in regards to these peer-to-peer transactions. And because of this, Brian mentioned that the process of getting this up and running is going to be slower than expected. Brian then went on to say that even if it does take a bit longer, it'll be okay. As long as the systems are in place and set up correctly, that's really all that matters. And you know what? I'm actually going to have to agree with him. I'd much rather have their platform have a smooth release rather than a fast and buggy release, which I think is something that a lot of companies could take note of. And lastly, Brian also addressed probably the most controversial thing about Humble, and that was the issuance of Class B shares. There's been a lot of noise about the preferred Class B shares issued to both Brian and other insiders. Here's my take on it though. Humble is a company that stands to shake up all the major money movers in the world: Western Union, PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App. And it's easy to understand that one of those companies could potentially try to do some hostile takeover by acquiring as many shares as they could on the open market to effectively eliminate their competition. And something also to keep in mind, preferred shares do not dilute common shares until they are exercised. Although a 1 to 10,000 ratio seems obscene for Humble, I highly doubt that Brian and his team of insiders have any intention of wrecking the company by everyone cashing in together in a short period of time. I think this measure was mostly implemented to prevent the hostile takeover, like I mentioned, which, maybe does seem a bit over the top, but I guess you never know. Those shares could then be converted if at any time there was a threat. It ensures that Brian and his team remain in control. And that's my take on it. So in total, even though the stock is trading at around $1 right now, and Humble's been flat for what seems like a long time, I've never been more bullish on this company than I am right now. If you plan on buying and holding this company for several years like I am, then you'll know that this dip into the dollar range is just another insane buying opportunity. I'm telling you, while the stock is around the dollar or even under $1 range, it's a steal right now compared to where I think Humble's price will be, 5-10 years down the line. And another thing to keep in mind too is that Brian Foote has already made a ton of people rich off the initial merger, and there will be a lot more to come. All you need is just a little patience with this one, and I think the rewards will be tremendous. And yeah, that's the video I have for you guys today. Thanks as always for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the update. I'll see you next time.